The wind outside howled as the dark clouds loomed over downtown Chicago. It was a cold, bleak Saturday evening, the perfect kind of night for a sleepover. Inside Emily's apartment, her friends had gathered, the room filled with laughter, chatter, and the occasional clink of soda cans. Emily, Sarah, and the others were in their early 20s college students with an endless thirst for excitement and adventure. They had known each other for years, always seeking new thrills to distract from the daily grind of classes and exams. But tonight, it wasn't about homework or plans for the weekend. It was about something far more chilling. The group had been discussing ghost stories, paranormal encounters, and strange urban legends when the topic shifted to one that had been circulating on the internet for years: the elevator game. The game was simple, or so it seemed, but the consequences of playing it were anything but ordinary. Emily had heard about it from a friend, and it had quickly sparked her curiosity. But Sarah had heard it all before. She had read the stories, seen the videos, and heard the rumors about how it could lead to another dimension, a place just like the real world, only darker and eerily silent. "It's all just an urban legend," Sarah said dismissively, cracking open a soda. "No one really gets sucked into another world just by pressing some elevator buttons." Emily didn't reply immediately. She had a look in her eye, one that Sarah recognized all too well. It was the look Emily got when she wanted to test something out, when the thrill of the unknown beckoned her. Sarah could already see where this was heading. "Maybe," Emily said, her voice low and almost secretive. "But what if it's real? What if we could actually see it for ourselves?" The room quieted as the others exchanged uneasy glances. They had all heard the stories: the mysterious woman who entered the elevator on the 5th floor, the strange atmosphere that engulfed those who succeeded in playing the game, the sensation of being watched. But none of them had taken it seriously, until now. The story of the elevator game was infamous, especially after a tragic incident in Los Angeles. Eliza Lamb, a young woman, was caught on surveillance video acting erratically inside an elevator at the Cecil Hotel. A few days later, her body was found in the building's water tank. The cause of her death remained a mystery, and many believed she had been playing the elevator game, which had somehow led her to a fatal outcome. "That's exactly why we shouldn't play," Sarah said, her voice growing concerned. "It's dangerous. What if something happens to us, like what happened to Eliza?" But Emily wasn't listening. She had already made up her mind. She and Sarah would play the game, and they would document everything that happened. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the desire for an adventure. But Emily was determined to experience it for herself. "Come on, Sarah," Emily urged. "You've always been up for a challenge. Let's just try it once. And if it doesn't work, then we can forget about it. But if it does, we'll have proof that this stuff is real. Plus, it'll make for an epic story." Reluctantly, Sarah agreed. She had always been the cautious one in the group, but there was something about the way Emily was speaking that made it hard to resist. They didn't know it yet, but their lives were about to change forever. The rules of the elevator game were simple, though chilling. According to the instructions they found online, the game required an elevator in a building with at least 10 floors. Emily and Sarah's apartment building had exactly 10 floors, which made it the perfect setting. The steps of the elevator game. 1. Find an elevator. It must be an elevator with at least 10 floors. You can play at any time of the day, though nighttime is often recommended for added effect. 2. Press the buttons in a specific sequence. Start on the 1st floor and press the button for the 4th floor. Press the button for the 2nd floor, then press the button for the 6th floor. Return to the 2nd floor by pressing its button again. Press the button for the 10th floor. Finally, press the button for the 5th floor. 3. The woman on the 5th floor. Once you reach the 5th floor, a woman will enter the elevator. She will not speak to you. You are not to acknowledge her presence in any way, nor should you look at her. She may seem familiar to you, but you must not look at her face or engage with her. This is crucial. Do not make eye contact. 4. The game's outcome. After the woman enters, press the first floor button. If the elevator descends, the game is over, and you are safe. Exit the elevator quietly, without looking back. However, if the elevator begins to rise instead, you have successfully entered another world, a parallel dimension that appears identical to the real one, but is unsettlingly different. The world will be eerily silent, with dim or no lights, and some people report seeing a red cross in the distance. 5. Exiting the other world. If you wish to return to the real world, press the buttons in reverse order. Do not stop pressing until you reach the first floor. When the doors open, step out quickly, without looking back. If you look back or hesitate, the game might not end as expected. Emily and Sarah had written down the sequence of steps on a piece of paper. They were nervous, but determined. They stepped into the elevator on the first floor of the building and pressed the button for the fourth floor. The elevator doors closed, and as it ascended, the faint humming noise echoed around them. At first, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. When they reached the fourth floor, the doors opened, and they pressed the second floor button. They followed the sequence without question, and when the elevator reached the sixth floor, the tension in the air seemed to shift. It was as if the atmosphere inside the elevator had changed, becoming thick and heavy. Emily pressed the button for the second floor again, then pressed the 10th floor button. Everything seemed fine until the elevator reached the 5th floor. The doors opened, and for a moment the hallway appeared completely empty. But then, just as the doors were about to close, a woman appeared. She was wearing an old-fashioned nightgown, her hair disheveled, and in her hands was a large, bulging bag that looked like it was filled with trash or something worse. Emily and Sarah froze, not daring to look at her. They followed the instructions. The woman stepped into the elevator without saying a word, and as the doors closed, Emily quickly pressed the first floor button. But instead of descending, the elevator ascended. Emily's heart raced as she looked nervously at Sarah. The elevator was going up, not down. "What do we do?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't know," Emily replied, her eyes fixed on the elevator's buttons. "We need to stay calm. We just have to get out of here." The elevator continued its ascent, and as it reached the 10th floor, the doors opened. But what they saw was far from normal. The hallway was completely dark. The lights in the building were out, and the air felt unnervingly still. There were no sounds, no footsteps, no voices, only silence, deep and heavy. The walls seemed to close in around them, and Emily's pulse quickened. "We need to go," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Let's get back to the elevator." They rushed back inside, pressing the button for the first floor once more. But the elevator didn't move. It didn't go down. It didn't do anything. "Why isn't it moving?" Sarah said, her voice cracking. Emily's hands shook as she pressed the first floor button again. But the elevator remained still, locked in place. They had crossed over into another world, a parallel dimension that seemed so much like their own. But something was horribly wrong. The stillness was suffocating. As they stood there, frozen with fear, the woman turned toward them. Her face was hidden in the shadows, but her eyes glowed faintly, and her mouth twisted into a knowing smile. "Where do you want to go?" she asked, her voice cold and empty. Neither Emily nor Sarah could speak. They were too terrified to move or respond. The woman repeated the question, louder this time, her voice growing more insistent. "Where do you want to go?" Suddenly, the silence was broken by a loud, guttural voice. "Are you deaf?" Emily and Sarah both froze. The woman's voice had become harsh, filled with malice. I don't know," Sarah stammered. But before she could finish, the woman's hand shot out and grabbed her arm. Emily screamed, but Sarah didn't move. She was paralyzed, unable to speak or react. At that moment, Emily pressed the button for the first floor in desperation. The elevator doors slammed shut, and the elevator began to descend. The woman's grip on Sarah loosened, and the elevator began its journey back to the real world. When the doors opened on the first floor, Emily and Sarah rushed out of the elevator, not daring to look back. They ran up the stairs to Emily's apartment, their hearts still pounding. They didn't stop running until they were safely inside. In the days that followed, the two friends couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Emily couldn't explain it, but she felt as though the woman had followed them back. She started having strange dreams, where she was stuck on the 10th floor of that strange, silent world, watching the woman approach her, her face always hidden in the shadows. And then, one day, Emily saw the woman again. She was standing at the end of the hall in her apartment building, her back turned. But when Emily looked away and looked back, the woman was gone. From that day on, Emily and Sarah never used the elevator again. They took the stairs, afraid of what might happen if they ever pressed the buttons again. They never spoke about the game again, but they both knew one thing for sure: the elevator game was not a game at all. It was a warning. And once you opened the door to the other world, it was almost impossible to close it. The elevator game wasn't just a story. It was a portal, a doorway to something much darker, something that didn't belong in their world.